You could really hear them sing and play. It sounded just like the record. And there's video of his now wife running onto the field. One of the girls with, like, you know, the beehive hair and blonde platinum hair running across the field, Maureen. In any case, so I wrote a book in the 80s called The Big Beat, which was interviews with my favorite drummers, all of whom told stories that led up to Ringo. And one aside I'll tell you is that before he died, I got very friendly with a guy named Dejo Hoffman, who was the Beatles. It was a very famous English, British photojournalist for magazines like Life and Look and wartime correspondent. And he was one of the first full-time Beatles photographers before they came to America. And I was looking for the perfect picture of Ringo for my book. And if you've ever been to London, his office was on Wardour Street, right near the Marquee, where the Marquee Club was. And this was in 1980 or 81. I went up there to his office, and he had just hundreds and hundreds of boxes of Kodak negatives all over. No fire sprinkler anyway. I said, well, I'm looking for a really unusual picture of Ringo. And he thought about it, and he says, I have just the thing. He goes over to a filing cabinet of never used Beatles pictures. And he takes out this picture, which is in my book, and it's the only time it's ever been used, where Ringo, he had this, Dejo put this effect where there were these starbursts coming off of Ringo, and John, Paul, and George were in silhouette. You only saw Ringo and his drum set on a platform. And I said, that's perfect for my book. And I said, why wasn't that ever used? He said, well, Mr. Epstein wouldn't use it because when I took it, Ringo was still a salaried member of the band. And he was selling the three other guys because they'd gone through a few drummers. And this was way before they came. This was like 1962, early 62. And so it was never used. The picture was never used because you can only identify, I mean, you can obviously see who it is. So I used that. But anyway, Ringo, I interviewed Ringo at his house, which was John's house in Tittenhurst Park in 81. And for the book, and we got, and I must say that I was like, Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live, remember when you were in the Beatles? And that's the real thing. That's how you are, right? At that point. Anyway, we got very friendly. And one time, we were, my wife and I, during our Born in the USA tour, were at Ringo's house, Ringo and Barbara's house, in Tittenhurst Park. He doesn't live there anymore. And I told him this story about, well, I never got, this was in 1985, it was about 4 years after I met him. I never got to see the Beatles. And, well, how we played several times in New York, played Carnegie Hall. And, well, I told him this very sad story about my ninth grade girlfriend. And she had one of those phone numbers that sticks in your brain, right? So he said to me, are you still in contact with her? Yeah, on birthdays, yeah, we talk. I said, and I remember her phone number. He said, call her. So it was a goof one night. So I called up 001, 201 was the exchange. And I go, Kim, it's Max. I'm in England. And we're on tour. Blah, 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 we're talking. I said, gee, I got a friend here who'd like to say hello to you. God's honest truth. So I hand the phone. It was a phone. It wasn't a cell phone, right? I hand him the phone. Kim, this is Ringo. And she doesn't believe it's Ringo's phone. And no, this is not. And then she said some choice words. And all I hear him say is, no, it's really Ringo Starr. So finally she believes him. And he was a jokester. He goes off on her. How could you do that to Max? We didn't know that it would be our third to last show we ever played. He was looking forward to it, and you took some other guy you met from Michigan. And I told him the whole story. And he really played it up. And then, of course, at the end he said, well, you know, it was a long time ago, all is forgiven. Right, Max? I said, nah, pile. So that's why I never got to see the Beatles, but I did get a little Beatle revenge.